The people of Flint, Michigan are upset that their water has not only been contaminated with lead, but now they're getting past due notices from their government indicating that they haven't paid and they're going to pay additional fees if they don't pay their water bill soon. This was reported by Slate and MLive, Michigan Live. Overdue notices because of a lawsuit accusing it of raising service rates improperly. So initially what happened is the service rates for the water in Flint, Michigan increased, even though the city was supposed to save more money by switching from its previous water source to its new water source, which had corrosive pipes that led to the lead being leaked into the water.
The toxic water. And this is before anyone even knew the water was going to be toxic, correct?
That's exactly right. So,
okay.
so there's a pending lawsuit. People don't pay their bills because why would you pay, these additional fees when A, you think that they're unjust, and then on top of that, you find out that the water is making you sick.
Yeah, that your children are being poisoned
by
a public good.
What is happening in this country right now? Like, do you know how enraged I would be if I was living in, let's say, Porter Ranch, and SoCal Gas sends me a bill when they have this massive methane leak that's forcing me to evacuate my own home, right? It's on the same level as that.
No, it totally is. It's so egregious as well, and completely tone deaf on the level of the public government, not listening. And not looking at the context of the situation. How can you send these notices? Like, why add to a total shitstorm that's going down, and then within the context of the socioeconomic conditions in Flint, and these people are so disenfranchised to begin with, and now they're having to deal with washing their children in bottled water. It is a complete disaster, and the governor has been pretty impotent on responding to this, and so that's a whole other side of the story is how it was ignored for a long time. I'm like, we already did this, Erin Brockovich. We already did this. We've seen the movie.
Yes.
And I think I feel like I saw an article too that she was even involved in bringing this to light.
Yeah, so she was involved. And she's also involved in what's happening in Porter Ranch, California, with the methane leak as well. But it's just important to understand that this kind of stuff is going to happen over and over and over again when people want to cut costs and they want to provide an important necessity to people at a lower cost by cutting corners, right? So interestingly enough, the big problem is that they have switched the water source, and the water is getting to people through these corrosive pipes, right? These pipes are lead pipes. A lot of homes throughout the country, have lead pipes built in them. And what happens is the water gets treated with some sort of chemical that, counteracts the lead in it. I don't want that either. How about we get to a point where we start replacing our lead pipes with copper pipes? I know that some homes have already done that, but shouldn't the government take some of the money that they're getting through taxes and renew the pipes that they're delivering water?
And wouldn't it be great if they created jobs while doing that? Again, we're talking about crumbling infrastructure in this country, whether it's corrosive pipes or highways that are falling apart. And all of these are opportunities, I really think, to turn the story around and ask the people in this community who are possibly unemployed to take part in rebuilding and give them good-paying jobs. I think there are, broad strokes one can take with this problem instead of ignoring it, which is essentially what happened. And now you have this complete disaster. And it's tough because I think people politicize the citizens' misery here, right? We've seen it. It came up in the debate, and I think it was important for the nation at large, or anyone who was, watching the debate on Sunday, to hear about Flint. But at the same time, I always, cringe a little bit when I feel like anyone is exploiting someone else's misfortune. And when I say anyone, politicians. And that can be Hillary or Bernie, whoever is going to jump on the Flint wagon and use that story. When really, we need to get resources to these people. Yeah,
that's a great point. I like that Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders brought it up during the debate just because this is a story that isn't getting a lot of attention in the press. And also, it seems like the governor of Michigan is doing very little to combat this issue. In fact, he was recently interviewed about this, and he compared this to Bush's Katrina. Remember, Bush didn't really do enough to help the people who were victimized by Katrina. And it seems like the governor of Michigan is pretty much doing the same thing, although he doesn't want all the blame to be placed on him. So when asked if the comparisons to Katrina, largely considered the biggest domestic blunder of former President George W. Bush's administration, were unfair, Snyder told the magazine, no, it's a disaster. He also says it's clearly a negative on what we've accomplished since I've been governor. You're right about that. So why don't you be a warrior and ensure that your constituents get the resources necessary to ensure that they have clean drinking water? Why do we live in a country where we pay for taxes, but our taxes never go toward things that we need, like infrastructure, keeping us safe, not having to pay for parking on the same streets that our taxes have already paid for? Like things like that, you know? So I see stories like this, and this isn't a privilege. Water is not a privilege. This is a right. And the fact that these people do not have access to clean drinking water in the most wealthy country in the world is ludicrous.
It is ludicrous, and I think it's also why people are infuriated when there's any discussion about raising taxes, because they feel like that money is so misspent as is, you know, and it's examples like this that make people just shut down when that conversation comes up, even if it is necessary to make some progress on certain issues. But it's this sort of situation that creates a complete wall, you know, when it comes to that sort of conversation around tax increases, because people are so frustrated.
Yes, absolutely.
Because they pay for these public goods and then they're burdened with this insane set of circumstances. I mean, I can't imagine one, worrying about my child's health in that kind of way, and then having to try to figure out how to live in this, you know, in this situation where you're literally pouring a bottle of Dasani water over your kid's head.
By the way, there was a Muslim organization that donated hundreds of thousands of dollars or hundreds of thousands of water bottles to Flint, Michigan. So it turns out that they're not all crazy terrorists that want to kill us.
Wow.
Weird.